Trước khi bắt đầu, nếu bạn đang tìm kiếm sách để học IELTS hiệu quả, thì đây là những cuốn sách chúng mình khuyên dùng. Bạn hãy xem ở phần giỏ hàng trong kênh nhé.
Part 4. You will hear a lecture about a special type of sneezing.
Welcome to this lecture in the health sciences intended to inspire you and get you thinking about your research project. Today, I want to show you how even ordinary human behavior like sneezing, which normally happens when you get a cold, may be worth studying. Have you ever been walking outside when a bright shaft of sunlight hits you between the eyes? The reaction of some people is immediate. An unpleasant prickling in the nose, an increase in their breathing rate, and an uncontrollable watering of the eyes. Then, almost as quickly, they sneeze and gain relief. This may happen every time they go into the sun. This so-called photic or light sneeze is a reflex, which means it can't be controlled, and it's very common. Anything between 1 in 10 and 1 in 3 people might be affected. In fact, a sneeze is triggered by an irritation of some sort in the linings of the nostrils. The result is a cascade of reactions, beginning with the stimulation of the nerve endings all over the face and generating an explosive expulsion of air at up to 95 miles an hour, like an extremely localized personal hurricane. The body's coordination of such reactions is complicated and belongs to the subconscious control hardware that regulates other things, for example, tears in the eyes. People have been interested in the phenomenon of photic sneezing for thousands of years. The Greek philosopher Aristotle asked, "Why does the sun prompt us to sneeze, whereas the heat of a fire does not?" A partial answer came 2,000 years later, when the English philosopher Francis Bacon showed that his photic sneeze had nothing to do with heat. If he closed his eyes when going into the sun, he didn't sneeze even though the heat was still there. Henry Everett, a consultant psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins University Hospital in Baltimore, was the first to make a systematic attempt to understand the condition. Noting in 1964 that 30% of the staff employed in the medical department were photic sneezers, Everett did some further investigation. He found that while 80% of sneezers reported other sneezers among their relatives, only 20% of non-sneezers did. Now, there are factors that are certain indicators of a photic sneeze. First of all, those with the condition almost always sneeze a set number of times on exposure to light. In addition to this, the sneeze depends on a contrast in visible brightness, such as when the sun moves out from behind a cloud. And the sneezing fit won't be repeated immediately. The body needs time before it can be recharged. So if you go back into a darkened space and then immediately re-enter bright light, you will not sneeze again. Now on to possible applications of research in this area. The photic sneeze had long been overlooked because its effects are generally less than serious, although the government did once study it as a risk factor for pilots. Yet work on such a simple disorder might lead to important discoveries on more acute conditions such as migraine or epilepsy, which are also caused by cross wires in the nervous system. That is why I encourage you to select something similar for your first investigative medical project. It could be the beginning of something even more useful. Now let's talk about the project timetable.
Section 4.
You will hear a talk at a university open day to students interested in following a course in textiles and business studies.
Thank you, first of all, for coming along to the university's open day, and in particular for coming to this talk to find out about our course in Textiles with Business Studies. The cooperation between the Faculty of Arts and Architecture and the Business Faculty enables us to offer this undergraduate and integrated master's course. In the 5 years this course has been running, we've learned a lot and it's become very popular. Now, thanks to the Faculty of Engineering, we're also able to offer a really exciting opportunity to those who would like to further diversify and would like to carry their learning through into new disciplines. Now, the aims of this course are firstly to create innovative and highly motivated textile practitioners within the disciplines of knitted textiles, an increasingly popular area, as you will have seen on the catwalks, printed, and of course woven textiles. Secondly, we also ensure that our students gain an in-depth knowledge and understanding of related business operations. We make sure that our students have sufficient hands-on experience by arranging interesting and relevant work placements. The focus of the integrated component of the work placement is the global market. Our aim is to locate studio work in this increasingly important context. Moving on to what we do in each year. In the first year, students explore the 3 subject areas of textiles in rotation. The emphasis for the first year is experimentation, and we ask for evidence of visual research, which must be supported by documentation and proposals for its application. In Year 2, design and technical skills are related to the real world. Unlike many other university textile courses these days, we give our students the opportunity to choose an extra module on the traditional processes of design, which gives a historical perspective on their work. This can be done before introducing students to computer-aided design. Students at this point, Year 2, decide if they intend to complete the course at Year 3 with a BA Hons or progress to Year 4 and conclude with a Masters in Design. Students can also have tutorials if they feel they need help making this important decision. This reflects our commitment to student support at all times. Year 3 consolidates the knowledge gained using a particular learning style. It's called reflective practice. That means you look back on what you've done and analyse and evaluate your subject in both academic and professional contexts. This helps and encourages deeper understanding. Students produce a dissertation on a topic of their own choosing and a portfolio of their textile collection. Also, to help underpin the commercial aspect of the course, we ask for a business plan. On the subject of career opportunities, many graduates work directly within the textile business, with careers commonly found as stylists and retail managers. However, it shouldn't be forgotten that there are many other exciting opportunities out there. For example, careers in journalism, for those with a flair for words, or trend forecasting for those with their eye on the future. We are certain that we shall see broader and more varied opportunities for our graduates. If you like what you've heard today and are thinking of applying for the program and you'd like to talk to us further, please come back tomorrow. You'll have the opportunity to do a brief interview where we'll be able to assess your aptitude for this subject area. Many students who haven't studied related subjects may be surprised to find that they're quite well suited to our program. After that, of course, you'll need to go through the usual application procedures.
Part 4. You will hear a student giving a presentation about houses which are built underground.
For my presentation on ecological environmental planning, I have chosen to talk about how underground housing, or earth-sheltered housing as it's more commonly known, can meet the demands of ecological environmental planning, both in terms of building and energy resources, and in terms of sensitivity to the landscape. Perhaps the greatest merit of this building technique is the low impact it has on the environment, since houses built underground can hardly be seen from the surface. If earth-sheltered homes are perfect for environmentally sensitive sites, they are also remarkably efficient when it comes to energy use. This is because this kind of housing makes greater use of alternative technologies to improve energy efficiency, as I shall explain in more detail later. Many earth-sheltered housing projects use natural, non-toxic resources for building materials, such as rammed earth, which are surprisingly durable. Some of these houses have a predicted lifespan of 500 years or more. The extra protection offered by this type of housing means less exposure to the elements, which keeps maintenance to a minimum, as there aren't any outside walls to paint or gutters to clear, for example. Living underground also brings the advantage of a quieter environment, eliminating disturbances caused by traffic, an enormous problem these days and one of the most common reasons for people to consider moving home. And lastly, despite the misconception that underground houses must be very damp, earth-sheltered housing offers significant health advantages. The sophistication of the ventilation systems installed in earth-sheltered houses brings enormous benefits to people suffering from asthma and other chest conditions. I'd like now to turn to the situation in the UK, where, despite all the obvious advantages, earth-sheltered housing still isn't a popular option for most homeowners, as the statistics prove. The British Earth Sheltering Association says that people shouldn't be put off by fears of too much red tape, as it is getting easier to get planning permission. There is quite a lot of evidence that building development officers are more sympathetic to earth-sheltered projects, especially in conservation areas. Special consideration has been given to several underground homes on sites where conventional development would not normally be allowed. And there are hopes that one day Britain's coastline will no longer be dominated by mobile homes, and instead the job of providing this type of accommodation will be done by earth-sheltered housing. I'd like to finish by looking at two quite different projects, Mole Manor and the Hockerton project. When it was first built, Mole Manor generated international media interest and was voted one of the 12 most desirable places to live in the world in a national newspaper poll. Hockerton also attracted wide publicity, winning several awards for its innovative environmental design. As is the case for all earth-sheltered homes, running costs at Mole Manor are substantially lower than for conventional homes. Because of its effective insulation, its heating bills are approximately 75% lower than for conventional houses. However, at Hockerton, solar energy, wind power and rain are used to generate enough warmth, electricity for light and cooking, and water for washing and drinking for all the needs of the 5 families who live there. Their aim of living a holistic lifestyle in harmony with the environment has been realised. Hockerton also proves that earth-sheltered houses can be built on a modest budget. Each of the families contributed £80,000, the cost of an average family house in this area. Style, rather than cost, was more of an issue in the design of Mole Manor. The homely terraced cottage style at Hockerton contrasts with the grandeur and space of Mole Manor, which today is worth over £800,000. What projects like Mole Manor and Hockerton demonstrate is that earth-sheltered housing can provide comfortable, stylish, eco-friendly homes for a diverse range of needs. The combination of architecturally sensitive designs with new energy-saving technology satisfies all the criteria for ecological environmental planning.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture given by an art and design lecturer on the topic of Aboriginal textile design in Australia.
The Indigenous people of Australia, or Aboriginals, have a long history of using animal and plant fibres to make a variety of fabric. Over the years, their traditional designs and stories have been incorporated into various textiles. The Ernabella Arts Centre is a place where local Aboriginals can produce their traditional craft and also learn new techniques to decorate fabric. For the first 30 years, the artists crafted rugs working with wool. These rugs incorporated their own unique designs. However, as they became less economical to produce, the artists were introduced to batik, which is an Indonesian method of dyeing textiles. Batik is quicker than weaving, so many of the Ernabella artists started to produce it themselves. Screen printing was later introduced to the centre, and Ernabella's artists were commissioned to produce fabric for furniture that was to be used at popular tourist destinations such as the National Park offices at Uluru. Screen printing has also been used successfully by the Tiwi people who live on islands north of Darwin. Their company, Tiwi Designs, produces fabric that is inspired by their surroundings. For example, they incorporated bird motifs into their early designs. Tiwi art, culture and language are very different from those of mainland Aboriginal groups. The patterns on their fabric are related to the beliefs and legends in their culture. For example, some textile designs are chosen because they are thought to cause rain. Another successful Aboriginal design company was founded by Jimmy Pike. His dynamic prints, paintings and fabrics are greatly influenced by the Australian landscape, in particular that of the desert, which is often featured in this work. Pike worked with acrylic paint, oil pastels and screen printing. Surprisingly, Jimmy Pike's life as an artist began in prison, where he was serving a sentence for murder. The art teachers there recognised his talent and gave him the technical skills he needed to become a successful artist. After Pike's release, he started his own company aiming to create a product that would sell well commercially but still retain its Aboriginal cultural identity. Eventually, he decided to bring his artwork onto textiles, which were used to produce clothing. The designs he selected were transferred onto cotton and had both a strong linear character and a good colour range. Bronwyn Bancroft is one of the most successful Aboriginal artists and designers to date. She has produced a great deal of artwork and textiles, and many of her paintings are held by Australian art galleries. Her work reflects her Aboriginal roots, but always with a contemporary, fresh view of family and the natural environment. In 1995, she was chosen by a charity organisation to paint a pair of jeans owned by Kathy Freeman, a famous Aboriginal Australian athlete. She used imagery of lizards moving quickly over the Australian terrain, and she added a rainbow, which represents the optimism that Kathy symbolises for all Aboriginal people. In 2001, she was chosen to design costumes for the opening of the biggest street parade ever held in Australia, the Journey of a Nation parade. The people in Bancroft's section of the parade all wore an outfit she designed. It featured the image of a snake that had no head or tail to represent an ongoing culture. Exploitation of creative work can be a problem for any artist, and copyright laws exist to protect individual artists from the unauthorised use of his or her work. This issue is often more complex for Aboriginal artists as the symbols and motifs used in their designs also hold cultural significance for them. An example of this was when a businessman had rugs made overseas incorporating images stolen from Aboriginal paintings. The carpet case, as it became known, was taken to court where luckily the artists won.
Part 4. You will hear a lecturer talking to a group of biology students about recent plant studies.
Good morning, everyone. In the last few weeks, we looked at ways in which different types of animals use their senses. And today, I'm going to introduce the topic of plant behaviour. And we'll look at the reasons why ideas about plants have been changing in the last few years. So, up until fairly recently, plants' lack of eyes, or ears, or noses, or mouths made them less interesting to many members of the public compared to animal species. And even by scientists, they were generally regarded as organisms which were essentially passive. However, in the last 20 years or so, evidence has started to emerge that plants can sense their surroundings in quite sophisticated ways. But because scientific attitudes towards plants and their capabilities had been fixed for such a long time, this evidence has been met with some disbelief. So, let's look at some of these recent findings that are starting to change the way some scientists view plant life. It all began with a Canadian study that looked at a species of plant known as the Great Lakes sea rocket. This is a wild plant which grows on beaches. In appearance, it's perfectly ordinary, with little purple flowers and a long stalk. But actually, the plant is far from ordinary. Normally, when the sea rocket detects other plants growing nearby, it quickly grows additional roots. This is so it can compete with these other plants for the available nutrients in the soil, by soaking up as many of them as possible. But scientists found that the sea rocket doesn't do that when the surrounding plants are related to it. And as even animals sometimes find this type of recognition difficult, such a finding was very unexpected. It was an ability that was previously unheard of in any other plant. Since then, it's been suggested that two other plants may have a similar ability. These are sagebrush and thornapple. It's been claimed that these plants can recognize the characteristics of their neighbours by sensing properties of the light that is reflected from them. The reason they are able to do this is that all plant species are slightly different to each other in this respect. So, each plant species has what you could call its own signature. Sagebrush and thornapple are able to recognize these. But scientists point out that this behavior is very different to the way that animals sense things. Another type of plant which can sense things in its surroundings is the dodder plant. This plant is different to most other species because it doesn't have the ability to make sugar by converting nutrients from the soil. This means that as soon as the dodder has sprouted from a seed, it needs to find another plant in order to survive. In other words, it's a parasite. Dodders infest a variety of food crops around the world as they wrap themselves like string around their target plants, and the effect can be devastating for farmers. It's particularly damaging to alfalfa, as well as to potatoes and different varieties of citrus. At first, scientists were puzzled as to how the dodder knows which plants to prey on. But now they found that the plant can identify a suitable host by sensing the chemicals that other plants release into the soil and air. What really surprised researchers was how extremely quickly and accurately the dodder identifies a possible host. They used time-lapse videos to study the mechanism and saw from these that when the dodder is trying to check out its environment, it rotates in a circle and then, without touching any other plants, it heads directly towards its selected host. It could sense reliably which type of plant it would grow best on. Scientists who were working on the project reported that the dodder sprout resembled a worm as it moved towards the other plant. Well, those are some examples of the new discoveries about plant characteristics. So, which direction is plant science likely to go in next? Many of the phenomena related to plant behavior that I've just described are now quite easy to observe, using up-to-date equipment. So, gradually, scientists are accepting the fact that plants are more capable than we used to believe. But although such plant behavior is often obvious, to some scientists...